In 1999, Sega released the Dreamcast, their last entry into the console market. After the Saturn fell well behind the PlayStation and Nintendo 64, Sega decided to pull out all the stops with the Dreamcast to regain the lead. Looking at the console, you'll find quite a few trailblazing features, including a modem which came standard and allowed for all Dreamcast users to play games online as well as download DLC years before it became the standard. The Dreamcast also was unique in the way it stored data. Instead of using ordinary memory cards like many of its competitors, games were saved on removable packs called VMUs. A VMU plugged into the controller and featured a display along with a few buttons, which allowed you to play a handful of minigames depending on what save data you had on the VMU. Looking at the controller, you'll find that it's surprisingly good. While a bit larger than you might like, it's got an interesting and nicely ergonomic shape, which is no small feat considering you could fit 2 VMUs into the controller. The joystick is really great, and the function buttons are nicely sized and spaced out. The rear triggers have a near perfect amount of feedback, and the entire controller is impressively rock solid considering how light it is. The Dreamcast hardware is fairly compact and good looking. Up front, you'll find 4 controller ports, along with a small, compatible with Windows CE logo. The Dreamcast was unique in the fact that the operating system was installed from the disk every time you turned on the system. This meant that it was possible to use multiple operating systems and updates to keep the Dreamcast always a step ahead. On the top, you'll find power and open buttons. The Dreamcast takes GD-ROM discs that look just like a CD, however they have 1.2 gigabytes of capacity. The sides of the console are fairly clean until you get to the back, where you will find ports to plug in the power cable, a serial port, AV out, and either a modem or Ethernet connections depending on which you had installed. Many regard the Dreamcast as being ahead of its time, and in many cases that's absolutely true. The graphics were solid, and the addition of online play in the interesting, if a bit underwhelming VMU was very unique. However, it just wasn't to be. By the time the PlayStation 2 came out, the Dreamcast was already losing steam, and Sega wasted no time in discontinuing their console business altogether after less than 2 years with the Dreamcast in the North American market. Regardless of how it did commercially, there's no doubt that the last ever Sega console went out with a bang.